Looking back on week 2 and 3 from last year brings us more glimpses into how special this football team can be this coming year.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Clemson podcast. I'm your host, John Bivens. You can find us over on Twitter at I am John Bivens, spelled Bivens, Bivens, right down here. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We are a credentialed media member, bringing you everything you need to know regarding Clemson sports. We're able to go down, and we can't wait to get back in the media room with baseball, basketball, and football, bringing you media insight onto this podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is bringing you your team every day. Here on the Clemson Podcast, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, all passion, all of the time. We're bringing you everything you need to know regarding Clemson sports. Today is Wednesday, June 19th. We're going to talk about some great things. We're 73 days from kickoff. We're going to dive into so much stuff. We're going to talk about week 2 and 3 from this past year. We're going to dive into 24/7, put out their sports ACC predictions, put out their AC predictions for this coming football season. And then we're going to end the episode with our weekly segment of Worried Wednesday. We're so grateful for all of our sponsors that make this show possible. If you joined our episode last week or yesterday, we talked about how from now to the end of the summer, we're going to go through every single game and talk about what happened, talk about the stats, talk about the box score, talk about what that game shows us and tells us about this year's team, looking forward to different things. And so yesterday's episode, we walked through that week 1 loss last year to Duke University. Today, we went through and we watched the entire game of Duke versus Charleston Southern. We walked through and watched the Florida Atlantic game from week 2 and 3 last year. And let me just say this. Watching all this football, going back and looking back at who Clemson played, and man, I'm just so pumped. I can't wait. I'm so ecstatic. I'm glad that college football, the video game, comes out in July because it brings a little bit more, something to hold us off until the end of August when Clemson opens up the season in Atlanta against Georgia. And so we're excited about that, but I am so pumped for college football to get back. But for today, we want to start off the episode. We just want to walk through and dive into those 2 games last year. The first game we walked through was week 2 against Charleston Southern. It was our home opener last year, and that was a good game. After an ugly upset game from Clemson, where Duke beat us at Duke, we needed a rebound game, and Clemson did exactly that in this Charleston Southern. I'm not going to lie, it started off pretty worrisome. It started off very worrisome. Clemson got the ball. We scored our first touchdown came in the first quarter on a 10-play drive, 68 yards for a touchdown pass from Cade Klubnik to Antonio Williams. And then Clemson offense started sputtering. It started sputtering. Overall, there was a fumble that led to a little mishandle between Cade Klubnik on a handoff to Phil Maffa. Charleston Southern recovered that fumble, went down, scored on a 1-yard touchdown run by J.D. Moore. So started off 7-7 in the first quarter. After that touchdown, Charleston Southern decided to sneak in an onside kick, and they got the ball back, which was awesome. We love to see that. But Clemson held them. They didn't score at all. Clemson got the ball back, started marching a little bit, and then Cade Klubnik threw a terrible pass off his back foot. Not sure what was happening. Threw an interception, and Leon Thomas for Charleston Southern returned it for a 67-yard pick six. So Charleston Southern went up early, 14-7. And at that moment, I remember watching this game, and I was like, all right, please don't let this be even worse than last week. Please don't let it be worse than Duke. But Clemson turned it on. And that's possession. They marched down the field, 7 plays for 57 yards in 2 minutes and 16 seconds. Which tied up the game right there. Second quarter, Antonio Williams, 5 yards. Second quarter, we got the ball real quick, got it back. 3 plays, 39 yards. Antonio Williams caught another pass from Cade Klubnik. Charleston Southern answered that with a long possession that led to a field goal, made it 17-21. And then as the half ended, Robert Gunn kicked a field goal, his first made field goal of the year. Made it to make it 24-17 going into halftime. Third quarter came, and we saw nothing but Clemson scoring. They really took it off. Phil Maffa scored. Wade Woodaz had a pick six. Bo Collins had a 69-yard pass from Cade Klubnik. Josh Schaap, 25-yard pass from Cade Klubnik. Jay Haynes, an 8-yard run, and Jay Haynes, a 6-yard pass from Paul Tyson. It was a great game. It was something that they definitely needed. Rough start, especially that fumble. Cade Klubnik came back and sprinted down the field, chased him down and tackled him at the 1-yard line on that fumble, but they still did score. Overall, great game. Before, just give a quick stats recap for what happened in that game, and then we're going to dive into the next one. Passing-wise, Cade Klubnik had a great game. He ended up going 28 for 37 with 315 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Rushing, our backups did well. Hunter Helms, 5 for 5, 48 yards. Paul Tyson, 3 for 3, 42 yards. Rushing ball, Will Shipley had 9 carries, and Phil Maffa had 9 carries. Shipley had 73 yards, no touchdowns. Maffa had 59 yards, 2 touchdowns. A lot of players ran the ball this year. They had 10 different players get some rushing stats on the board. Receiving yards, Bo Collins had an outstanding game, 7 receptions for 137 yards, 1 touchdown. Antonio Williams, 5 for 64 with 2 touchdowns. Josh Schaap, 1 for 25, 1 touchdown. Troy Stellato had 5 for 51, 0 touchdowns. Great there. A little nice there. Cade Klubnik did lose the only fumble. Wade Woodaz had a pick, which was nice to see. Nate Wiggins had another interception, which was nice to see. Tyler Brown not only showed up on the receiving side, as he had a couple good receptions. He had 2 for 9 yards, but he also showed up in the punt returns. He had some great punt returns, making some people miss this week and the next week. But overall, it was a great day, great stats. Then we go into week 3, and they kept it going. They kept doing what they needed to do. They came out and dominated. Started off the play, first possession. Florida Atlantic got the ball first, went 4 plays for 13 yards, and on the 4th play of the drive, threw a pick 6 to Nate Wiggins. Later on, Tyler Brown had a 30-yard pass from Cade Klubnik for a touchdown. Jake Brenningstool had an amazing catch in the end zone from Cade Klubnik. Phil Maffa had a nice 19-yard run. Cade Klubnik a touchdown run that was like a QB sneak tush push from the Eagles. Tyler Brown later on a touchdown pass again for his second one of the day. And then in the 4th quarter, Michael Johnson Jr., their backup quarterback, came in for a touchdown run for Florida Atlantic. Dominique Thomas got a 2-yard run later on for Clemson, and then they ended up, Florida Atlantic scored again in garbage time on a trick play, little handoff to the wide receiver jetting across, and then he threw it up to a wide receiver on the sideline. Overall, Clemson scored, and they won 48-14. Overall, Clemson started this game on a 41-0 run. 41-0. Love to see that. Absolutely love to see that. That's exciting. That brings some good stats. That brings some good energy. Nice to see these 2 wins off the bat. Some of the box score, just real quickly going through those. Cade Klubnik had a good day. Again, 16 for 27, 169 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Rushing the ball, Phil Maffa, 5 for 42 with 1 touchdown. Will Shipley only had 10 for 38, didn't have a great day, 0 touchdowns. Cade Klubnik had a rushing touchdown. Dominic Thomas had a rushing touchdown. Receiving-wise, our leading receiver is Adam Randall with 51 yards on 2 receptions. And then Tyler Brown, Antonio Williams, Jake Brendenstool all had 3 receptions, with Tyler Brown having the most yards with 49 and 2 touchdowns. Great day. We did lose a fumble. Tyler Brown fumbled it and lost it. Zaire Patterson fumbled as well, but we didn't lose it. And the interceptions, Nate Wiggins had 1, Wade Woodaz had 1, and Khalil Barnes, all 3 had an interception. It was a great game. On those punt returns, Tyler Brown again had 2 punt returns for 47 yards here. Had a great punt return there. Overall, these 2 games were encouraging. They were fun to watch. They're extremely fun. They brought back the team. It was like, all right, we lost to Duke, but they kind of got our hopes up here. They played really well in these 2 games. The things that really worried me, and I think we'll see this as we move on, is 1, our offense kind of started slow a couple times. Their first possession started a little slow. 2, and this was a problem that I don't think enough people talked about, but Cade Klubnik has got to work on his eyes. The first 3 weeks last year, he's eyeballing the receivers. Wherever he's going, he's looking at the entire time. He doesn't look at the second look. He doesn't he doesn't progress his eyes across the field. His eyes photographed what he was doing the entire time, which I think we'll see later on when we get in the Florida State game, the NC State game, we'll see people, they started reading that, and their safeties, the cornerbacks, the linebackers, they were watching Cade's eyes, and they knew exactly where he was going with the ball. So worried there. Also worried our offensive line really didn't have a lot of offensive yards on the rush game, but in either of these games, and that's a little worrisome there when our line should be dominating these schools. But overall, it was fun 2 weeks. Excited to see all of that. It was a great time. In just a minute, we're going to continue this conversation 24/7, which if you're a fan of the podcast, you know we like them. They're a great resource. They put out their final record predictions and order of finish for the 24 season for ACC. So in just a minute, we're going to dive through all of that and more. We'll see you in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So looking back, watching those first two games from last year, they were exciting to see. It was really exciting to watch, really exciting to see. Bring some energy. Again, as the season goes forward and future episodes this offseason, we will be diving through all 12 games. We've got 9 left to go through. We're going to hit all of those so much more detailed. The rest of the games will get a full episode just for them. So we won't no more two games in one episode. We will be doing a full segment on each of those games. We're excited to see. But 24/7, which is a great resource. We use them for recruiting. We use them for transfers, and we use them for all kinds of articles. They put out their latest and their final ACC predictions for how each team's going to do, who their losses are going to come against, and the final order of standings for the ACC. So we're going to quickly go through all of these teams and then talk about where Clemson landed. So number 17, last place. You hate to see it. They got Tony Elliott's team at Virginia, going 2-10, going 0-8 in the conference. They have their only wins coming against Richmond and Coastal Carolina, and they talk about how those two are both possible losses. So there's a chance they don't win a game this year. I think they'll get at least one win in the ACC, but you never know. I hate that for them. I really wish he had success. The Nets up 16th over on the ACC. Stanford finishing 3-9, 1-7 in the conference. Has their wins coming against Cal Poly, Wake Forest, and San Jose State. Boston College, Bill O'Brien's coming into town. He's an ACC coach, old Houston Texans head coach. He has coached an ACC quarterback before with Deshaun Watson, but he comes into Boston College, and while I think he's going to be success for a long time, I think he is going to bring success over time, build this program back up a little bit. I don't think it's going to be immediate, and neither does 24/7. They have them finishing 15th, 3-9, 1-7. Wins coming against DeQuesne. I think it's actually DeQuesne. They had a great run in the March Madness this past year. Then they also win at Virginia and then Western Kentucky. I'm excited to see that. 14th place, one of the biggest fall-offs, and it's due to head coach losing and quarterback transferring. They have Duke finishing 4-8 and 1-7 in conference. Their wins coming against Elon, UConn, MTSU, and Wake Forest. It's funny, Wake Forest is losing the 2 games according to them. 2 teams above them or worse than them in the rankings, but they have Wake Forest coming in at 13th, going 5-7, 2-6 in conference. Wins coming against North Carolina, A&T, Virginia, Louisiana, UConn, and California. Excited to see that, and this should be a great season. Wake Forest is a team that they're either really good or they're really bad, middle of the road. They could really be all over the place, but I don't expect them to get any huge wins later on against NC State, Clemson, Miami, anything like that. 12th place, they have Pittsburgh going 5-7, 2-6 in the conference. Their conference wins are Virginia and Boston College, also beating Kent State, Cincinnati, and Youngstown State. So excited to see there. Now 11, here's where we're going to switch. Instead of focusing on the wins, now we're going to talk about the losses that they project for each team. 11th seed overall in the ACC, they have California, new ACC member, finishing here 6-6, 3-5 in conference. They're predicting them to lose at Auburn, at Florida State, against Miami, North Carolina State, Syracuse, and at SMU. So first year in the ACC, don't expect much success. 10th, they have Syracuse. Right here, their losses are projected. They're going to 8-4, so 10th seed in the ACC going 8-4. Shows the ACC style with football, but their predicted losses are Georgia Tech, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Miami. 9th seed, they have Georgia Tech, 7-5, 5-3. Losses against Florida State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Miami, North Carolina State. Georgia Tech was the only other ACC school that listed in the toughest schedules for this upcoming season, with Clemson being ranked higher than them. Louisville finishing 8th according to them, 7-3 or 7-5, 5-3. Losses coming Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Miami, Clemson, Kentucky. Virginia Tech coming in 7th, and this is one that a lot of people are putting higher. A lot of people have Virginia Tech a little bit higher than this, but they have Virginia Tech going 8-4, 5-3. Losses at Rutgers, Miami, Georgia Tech, and Clemson. 6th seed overall, again, a little bit of a fallback. North Carolina going 9-3, 5-3 in conference, 3 losses in 6th seed. We're going to talk about that in our third segment, but their losses are Georgia Tech, Florida State, and North Carolina State. We do not play Carolina this year unless we face them in the ACC championship game. Don't expect that to happen. But the 5 seed overall, SMU, new conference, new guy to the conference, another new school, supposed to finish 5th in the conference. Kind of exciting to see. Projected to go 9-3, 6-2 in conference. Losses against TCU, Florida State, and Louisville. Number 4, in these 4 spots, I've seen people predict them at all different spots. The 4th one, they have NC State finishing 10-2, 7-1 in conference, losing to Tennessee and Clemson. They have us finishing at 3rd. We'll talk about more in a second. Miami, they have Miami finishing 2nd, going 11-1, 7-1 in conference. Losses only to Florida State. Miami does not play Clemson this year, but they should have them beating everyone else, just losing to Florida State. And coming back to Florida State, they are expecting Florida State to go back-to-back ACC regular season champions, making it back to the ACC championship where they have them winning again there. They predict their only loss comes to Notre Dame. Florida State has a all right schedule. They play 2 teams ranked, but we'll talk about that more in a second. And then Clemson, going back to them, they have us finishing 3rd. And what they have for us is they have us losing the 2 games that honestly aren't bad losses, either of them. They have us losing to Georgia in the opening game and then Florida State at Florida State later on in the year. They're calling those 2 games 2 of the biggest games in the ACC this season. One setting that scene, week 1, kicking off football with arguably the best team in the ACC over the past couple years with Clemson versus the best team in the SEC with Georgia over the past couple years. So that's going to be an exciting one. And then that week 5 matchup against FSU, they are saying is the game of the ACC this year, as that'll determine a lot for that ACC championship game and what teams will be playing there. So that's who they have there. There's a lot to dive in there. And honestly, there's some things that are causing some worried. So we're going to talk about what is worrying us, what about this, what's causing us to have a little bit of fret about this as we talk about this and so much more in just a moment. We'll see you in a second. Welcome back to the Locked On Clemson podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Bivens. Thanks so much for joining us today. So every day of the week, we have a regular segment that comes in. If you're regular to the podcast, you know these. Monday is Momentum Monday. Tuesday is Tracking Tuesday. Wednesday is Worries Wednesday. Thursday, Turbulent Thursday. And Friday is Flashback Friday. So on this Wednesday, we're diving into Worried Wednesday. What is that? Well, that is where we go through and we look at the program, we look at what's news, we look at what's happening, and we just kind of identify a topic that we're truly worried about. Identify a topic where what are we cautious about? What's causing us to fret? What's causing us to worry in the ACC when it comes to Clemson at this time? And so one of them that we're talking about and that we're really worried about is going to be the fact of Clemson's football season this year and how the ACC conference will work and the playoffs will work. So here's how it works. ACC is usually divided up into an Atlantic Conference and then another conference. So the ACC has two different divisions inside the ACC. And usually the ACC championship game is the winner of each of those divisions face off. But ACC has recently changed that. How it is now is there's no divisions. Everybody plays. You have your regular opponents you play every year, but then it cycles through the rest of the ACC. For instance, we played Duke last year. We won't play them for a couple years now. Same with Carolina. But how it works now is just the top two overall teams in the conference based on conference play will now go to face each other in the ACC championship. Why is that worrisome? Here's why it's worrisome. When it looks to the top three teams, it looks like the top three that most people are saying are Florida State, Miami, and Clemson. So let's just go through their schedules. Real quick. So Miami's schedule, they have a relatively easy schedule. They start off with Florida, who's on the downturn. Then they got Florida, Ball State, USF Bulls, Virginia Tech. Tough one, but it's at home, a little different. At California, then they have a bye week. Then the only two ranked games they have all season is against Louisville right now, ranked at 21st, and Florida State ranked at 15th. Then they go to Duke or play Duke, Georgia Tech, another off in the season with Wake Forest and Syracuse. They have a very winnable season. They have a season that is very winnable for them, especially a team with all the hype that they have. So that's a winnable season. So if that's the case, let's say they drop one of those games. Let's say they lose to FSU. Well, now there is one loss team in the ACC right now. Now we go to Florida State. What's their schedule look like? Again, they have a very, very season that is favorable to who they are. They started off with Georgia Tech, starting off with ACC on August 24th. Then they go play Boston College off on the 7th, play Memphis, California, SMU. Then they go play Clemson at FSU. We go to FSU and play them first week in October this year. Then we're off 18th. We play Duke, they play Duke, and then they go to Miami a little bit later. That's their second ranked game. Play North Carolina, and then they have a big game against Notre Dame at Notre Dame, November 9th. Off in the season with Charleston Southern and Florida Gators. Winnable season. Honestly, that season right there set up for a one-loss season. All right, so they got a one-loss season. Miami's got a one-loss season. What does that mean for Clemson? Well, let's go through their schedule. We start off against the number one team in the nation with Georgia Bulldogs. Then we play App State, who's, yes, it's in the lower conference, but they're still a great team every year. Then we're off. Then we play our second-ranked opponent with NC State, who's supposed to be a good team this year. Then we play Stanford, who's new to the ACC. Then we go to Florida State, and we play at Florida State, playing our third-ranked team for this year. Then we play at Wake Forest, home against Virginia. We're off. We start November off with two very tough games. We play Louisville Cardinals, who are on the upswing. They're definitely on the upswing. We're ranked right now 24th for our fourth-ranked game so far. So there's fourth-ranked games on our schedule right now. Then after that game, we go to Virginia Tech, which we've talked about. Virginia Tech is one of the toughest places to play. Their fan environment, their culture, what happens there, playing at Virginia Tech against Virginia Tech, and then playing at home against Virginia Tech is like playing in a Power 5 conference and a G5 power conference, right? Very different. They're very different environments. So that's a tough one. Then we go again and we play at Pittsburgh, which you never know what you're getting from Pittsburgh. They could be great. They could be terrible. Then we play the Citadel, and we end the season with South Carolina, who that rivalry, it doesn't matter where the teams are at. They're going to play well. That's a tough schedule. We're in the top 10 hardest schedules in all of college football. So what that means with Florida State and Miami's schedule, if both of them go and lose one game apiece, and Clemson goes, let's say Clemson goes and wins two games or loses two games. They lose to Georgia and then they lose to FSU, or they lose another game throughout the season. It don't matter who we lose to. If FSU and Miami go and win, we'll only lose one game this season and we lose two, all of a sudden we're not in the ACC championship game. Even if we have a great rebound year, we're not in the ACC championship game. And with the college football program or format how it is, the playoff format how it is very unlikely that a two-loss ACC school not making the conference championship game makes the college football playoff. So then that goes to show how important every single game is this year. That's why we're worried. We're worried because we start off against a huge opponent with Georgia week 1. If we beat them, that does wonders for our season. Not only does it prove Clemson's back, not only does it prove this team's serious and Dabo is who he is, and he's an amazing coach as he is, but it also would set us up with a little bit more breathing room throughout the season to still make the ACC championship game. So that's there. Then we go on. We play NC State, who NC State always plays us tough. They beat us this past year. Great team. They're ranked 18th already. We play at Florida State as we go up against DJU, going back and facing Clemson. That's going to be a tough game. We have tough games throughout the season, throughout the entire season from top to bottom. I mean, our final 5 games are at 3 different ACC opponents, and all 3 have been competitive in the ACC recently. And then it also faces South Carolina, one of the biggest rivalries in all sports. Tough, very tough schedule. I'm not worried because Clemson doesn't have the talent to do it. I'm not worried because Clemson doesn't have the ability to do it. I'm worried because there's so little leeway. It felt like with this 12-team college football playoff coming out in this format that Clemson got a little bit more leeway to make the playoffs. I don't think so. Because I think if we get in, if we make the ACC championship and we don't win the ACC championship, I think there's still a good chance we'll make the playoffs. Because then you're a one-loss school who lost in the championship as long as we don't get blown out, which I don't think we would. But then that's a different story. But if we're a 2-loss team outside of our conference champion, there is very little chance that we're able to make it into that playoff. So I'm worried because there's such little leeway. We cannot have a slow start. We've got to come out of the gates on fire. We've got to come out swinging. We've got to start playing hot immediately. If not, we could easily see our college football playoffs chance gone by week 5. If we come out and we lose to Georgia and we lose to Florida State, our season now not only rests in our hands to be able to win out and win the remaining games, which we could, but it also lands in the hands of Florida State having to lose one of their opponents late, which include Duke, Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, Charleston, and Florida. They'd have to lose 2 of those. It landed in the hands of Miami having to lose 2 games between Louisville, Florida State, Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. The first 5 weeks are huge for Clemson. Every single game matters, and we're worried because we got to make sure our players are ready for it. We had some big changes this offseason. There is no runway. We don't have a runway. We've got to be helicopter. I say that, here's what I mean. Runway, the plane gets a little momentum before it gets off the ground. Helicopter straight up. We got to be that helicopter. We can't we can't just wait and get off the runway. We got to take off immediately and go. We've got to be able to win. If not, our college football playoff chances are out the window. So that's what we're worried about today, and that is a topic we're going to be talking about more this offseason as we go through getting ready for college football, getting ready for the season. But with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Hey, as the week goes on, we're going to keep talking about football, keep diving into these game recaps. Hey, let us know your thoughts on the topic that we talked about today. What's your thoughts on those week 2, week 3 games? Go back and watch the recaps. Go back and watch. You don't have to watch the full game. They have a short recap video if you wanted to watch that. Go watch those. Just get that energy back. Get hyped. Let us know your thoughts on those. Let us know your thoughts on where 24/7 predicted us, had us at the 3 spot. Do you agree, disagree? Also, do you share a worry? Are we overhyping this? Am I really over worried about this, or are my worries valid? Let us know your thoughts. Drop a comment and let us know. Also, if you haven't, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcast at, and if you're over watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. That way, every day we can be your first listen here on the Locked On Clemson podcast. We can't wait to see you on tomorrow's episode, but until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, go Tigers.